Hi, Misha here, and this is a Blackbox road trip? I'm not sure. I'm actually down visiting family for my birthday, although when I publish this video it won't be my birthday. But the internet went down here, so without much to do, I decided to come outside and do this because I said I would do a Blackbox. Also, I'm sitting in a bird hammock thing. I don't know. It's not my usual swing because I'm not at home. And I also have my cell phone with me. So it's very possible this video could be interrupted by one of two things. Either my phone ringing because I'm waiting on a couple of calls, or me falling on the ground. So, yeah, this could get more entertaining than we signed up for. With that said, Blackbox thoughts, what's going on as we enter into the middle, November 2022. Well, first off, it's really hot. Where I live, it was nearly 80 degrees a day or two ago. And where I'm at now, it was actually over 80 degrees. But even though it's still cool enough that I'm able to sit outside at 11 p.m. with just light pants and a short sleeve shirt on, even having just showered with some wet hair and still not be cold at all, they're saying it's going to drop down to freezing or near so tomorrow night, with highs in the upper 40s, low 50s. So if that's going to happen, it's going to have to drop in a big hurry between now and then. And the plan, as I record this, is to go shooting with Fox tomorrow. Got another batch of guns. Gonna keep trying out that Kalashnikov USA Pt.2, which is actually one of the topics I do want to circle kind of back around to in this video. Get there in a minute. Also, just for fun, and because I did pick up actually one of them years ago, for my birthday. Not this birthday, a different birthday, although it was on the same day of the year. Funny how that works. One of the Legion USA Russian builds. I want to talk about those too. In fact, there's a video there for the main Mishaco channel, all told. I also brought my Pt.2 because why not? And I took in on trade 2 US-made Sig Sauer Incorporated Sig 551A1s. So that's the US Sig 556, but whereas the Sig 556 feeds from Stanag mags, AR-15 mags, the 551A1 feeds from Swiss mags, and that's a pretty special gun to me, even though I don't own one now, because it's where we started off the original main Mishaco channel way back in June, July of 2011. I say June, July because I think we actually recorded the video in June, but it got published in July. But of course, things progress on from there. So I brought that out along with the 16-inch 551 import because I wanted to see if Fox could tell a difference. It should be fun. And because I felt like we needed an AR representative in the setup, and because I didn't feel like packing a ton of calibers, and since we already had those 223 guns, I decided to bring the LMT Estonian R20 again. We did shoot that earlier in the year when we were at the cabin, but that cabin trip was more about doing the cabin video than it was the Estonian gun. So even though I've had it out to the range a couple of times since then, haven't really done a video on it again. And it is a really nice, fun gun to shoot. Now, even though the main weather says it'll be sunny, there is a chance of rain, so cross fingers that if it does rain, it's early in the morning as the weather drops, and by the afternoon, it clears off and we can have a good range day. Hopefully, because now it's getting dark by 5:30 at the absolute latest, so we'll need to get shooting as early as possible. So that's the plan for tomorrow, and then the day after, planning on eating with family, and then the wife will be coming to get me back over the mountain and back home. So with that, I'm actually surprised, A, I haven't fallen yet, and B, my phone hasn't rung. With that, let's talk about a few off-the-cuff topics, because there has been a lot going on in the old world lately. First off, the recent elections, the midterms. I really don't want to get into it, because no matter what I say, there will be a vocal group unhappy. There'll be a group that agrees and a group that doesn't. It's kind of gotten past that point where you can have a sportsman-like disagreement, and a lot of people take it very personal, very serious. As serious, I agree, but they get it very emotional. Either way, the facts remain what happened, and thanks to runoffs and recounts, which is honestly normal for a lot of close elections, regardless, probably something we really won't have an answer to until shortly before Christmas. So, yay, dragging it out. But that's how it goes. And I do agree with the idea of doing something right, taking one's time, and recounting is always a positive thing, as long as it's not costing taxpayer dollars unnecessarily. But when it's necessary, it's necessary. This could very well be a pivotal midterm. I think everyone was saying that, but it may end up being a different type of pivotal midterm. We'll see how things unfold in the days, weeks, months ahead. It's hard for me to really say, because the midterms here in Arkansas were kind of already predetermined and went the way everyone expected. Other places, Georgia, I couldn't vote in anyway, so I don't know. It is what it is. But that happened, and we made it through. But that's all I have to say about that. Now, onto something only slightly less controversial. KUSA. Kalashnikov USA. But first, as I said a minute ago, I packed my 2 Legion USA guns. Now, I haven't bought from Legion in a long time. Frankly, they haven't had anything really up my alley in a couple of years. But, 6, 7, 8 years ago, they were the place for some really high-quality Russian stuff. As much as Kvar was once the place for Bulgarian stuff, Legion USA kind of had the in for getting a lot of Molot, even Isha stuff, Izhmash, Kalashnikov concern. And I used to deal with Alexei there, but he left. And to my mind, when he left, it was over, but I'm sure it's more of a chicken and the egg. He might have left himself because he saw it was ending. And that's not really entirely their fault because of tightening sanctions and restrictions on Russian imports. But the 2 guns I had built, first, they did a series of RPK builds. And I thought they were pretty cool. I've always had a thing for the RPK. And they had original matching kits. And while they were service guns, they had been reconditioned in Russia by Molot. So either the guns were new parts, new unissued parts, or if they were used parts, they had been, reblued, repainted, or replaced if worn out. So pretty cool. Now, of course, to come over to the USA, the receivers and unfortunately now the barrels had to be chopped up, especially coming out of Russia. So that meant even if you had a nice matching kit, you'd have to have a US barrel and receiver. The good news is those 2 parts themselves don't have serial numbers on a Kalashnikov. The serial on the receiver is actually the serial on the front trunnion for an import. Now, of course, a U.S. built gun on a U.S. receiver, that U.S. receiver is going to have a new serial typically on the underside. And again, the barrel, while it would have proof stampings, it would not have a serial number on it, usually. So I had Alex kind of send me over some, and these would be built on Nodak receivers, which were really the best thing going at the time for RPK style 1.5 millimeter stamping, complete with faux Russian markings. And, well, it's not my first choice, Green Mountain barrel, at least chrome lined. So, not like Century, who always use the non-chromed. Well, I say always. 95% of the time, they use the non-chromed. So at least it was a chrome-lined Green Mountain barrel. So, yeah, that's what you can do. Keep in mind, RPKs have a longer, heavier barrel, so your options are limited. And unfortunately, the Bulgarian RPK barrels that Arsenal has, since they're for the Bulgarian LMG, they won't really fit the Russian pattern. They're a different style. So what was neat about one kit he had in particular, it was 1961, which is nominally first year of production, at least first year of full production. The RPK, Kalashnikov handheld machine gun, Kalashnikov light machine gun, was designed at Izhevsk, but because they did not have production capacity, production was transferred around 1959 after it was officially adopted to what we know today as Molat. And they would first build guns using Izhevsk parts and then tool up to make their own parts. And their first full guns were in 1961. And they're interesting because they have AKM parts in some ways. They have a ribbed top cover, and they have a non-lightning cut bolt carrier, kind of like the original AK-47. Kind of neat, and a wood pistol grip. Otherwise, the RPK is shockingly similar today to its 1960 iteration. Either way, I thought that was a neat build, so I brought it out. Now, the other gun is a little different. Those who've been around a while know that some years ago, I did a special build run of AKMs from Legion USA. Now, they had been offering an AKM build for a while, and retail price on them was, I think, $1,300-$1,400 with bayonet, sling, cleaning kit, one mag. And these were already pretty nice guns. They were built on Molat refurbished kits, 7.62 by 39, of course, typically on Childers receivers, and they had chrome-lined Green Mountain barrels. The Childers receiver was perfectly fine with. For one, it had proper markings. For another, at least at that time, the receivers were brought over as flats from Poland, so they were actually stamped out on our original tooling, complete with XY stamps and all that good stuff. So the receiver was practically an import, although not really. But the Green Mountain barrel, I didn't really want. And since AKM barrels are a lot easier to find, even imports, I sought a replacement. And I kind of went between Romanian and Polish, and at the time, those brand new Virgin FB Radom barrels were out. So I sent about a dozen of those to Legion USA, and also hand-picked out a few kits, and they built them for me under contract for my company. And I intentionally went for late production kits, whereas the RPK I went early. And that's because while early Russian AKMs look pretty much the same as other contract AKMs, Romanian, Egyptian, etc., late Russians have quite a few changes because of production shifting to the AK-74 that are very different from other nations. So there's some neat late features. For example, the sling swivel on the buttstock moved from the bottom to the side. And I picked out one that happened to just tickle my fancy. I believe it was in Ishesk 1977. But I had about 6 Tula and 6 Ishesk. Earliest date I think was 72, maybe 73. And the latest date was, I believe, 77, 78. And I just found one that I really liked, and it's a good shooter. So we have an imported barrel, we have almost a true imported receiver, and we have a numbers matching Russian kit. That to me was as good as we were really going to get for Russian, because we've never had a Russian AKM or RPK, original RPK that is, import. It's just how the cookie crumbles. By the time we were getting Russian guns, those were not made anymore. They were well into the Century series, the AK-100 series. So those were what we had when kits were available. But today, people are paying exorbitant money to $3,000 even for Russian parts kits. Without receivers for sure, and oftentimes without an original barrel. I am not down for that. And that's really where Kalashnikov USA can kind of step in. What KUSA can do, should do, said they're going to do, build the AK-100 series in the USA using original blueprints. Now, just because they have the original, let's call it TDP, although that's not really the correct Russian term, but you know what I mean by that. Even though they have it and know how it should be done, sometimes they have to acquiesce to either American manufacturing or just modern manufacturing techniques for a company of their size and scale. That's just reality. So they might know that a barrel needs to be cold hammer forged chrome lined, but if they don't have access to that barrel, they might have to go to a button rifled, or they might know how a bolt or whatever should be made, but they might have to use billet because that's what's available. By the way, people often talk about how they use billet bolts instead of forged. Fun fact, look up the difference between billet and forging. There is one, there is. But look it up and you'll see why it's kind of funny. And they started off strong. You know, we've talked a lot about the KR9, KP9, the KR103, fixed stock, and even side folder did well. And for a while, they were the internet's darling, comparing them very favorably to Century, also often favorably to PSA. But now the internet does its internet thing and has flipped on them. And that was really representative in the comments on my AK-104, KP-104 preview video. And there are legitimate complaints, but I also think there are complaints that are probably a little, hyperbolic, whatever you'd like to say. For one, I too think their recent marketing using women, presumably attractive women, but I don't know, is silly. I've always thought the whole combining girls and guns kind of a weird, misplaced emotion. It's like, I understand why people like cars, guns, whatever. What I don't understand is how that seems to connect directly to the sexual drive. To me, they're just very different and compartmentalized parts. I don't get sexually stimulated by a gun, and a girl doesn't give me the same kind of feelings that a firearm would. So, but I also understand that does appeal to some people. Now, them using ex-porn stars, I don't really guess I have much of a dog in that fight. While I do think it's silly and distasteful, I also don't think that just because someone was in adult entertainment that they should be mocked and never have a job for the rest of their lives. Would I marry? See, I told you the phone rang. Well, for you, it's been like a second. For me, it's been an hour, because once the phone starts ringing, it usually keeps ringing. Anyway, as I was saying about KUSA, their marketing, is kind of neutral. It's neither here nor there for me, personally. I think it's silly. But they're not the first, and they won't be the last gun company to do that. And as Fox said, sex sells. And, well, at least they're hiring professionals. I mean, say what you will about a porn star. They are literally professionals when it comes to sex. But, Now, the accusations about poor QC, that's more legit. You know, on my KR103 side folder, I really didn't have any, design complaints. I got it with the right safety. But the KP104, it came with the KS12, the Sega 12 style safety. That needs to be rectified. It also came with the 1,000 meter rear sight, not 500, which is just really more of a cosmetic difference for someone wanting to do an AK104 clone. But it did kind of surprise me, because in other ways, they still have been, quote-unquote, clone correct, having the AK104 muzzle device, the booster, having the short cleaning rod complete with the tapered front end, so on and so forth, even having the reinforcing plate on the grip. So I wouldn't really say that's a major QC fail. I think someone there just didn't understand the difference in the safeties. That's certainly something that should be fixed. But I've seen a lot of gun companies make much bigger mistakes. Luckily, that's one that can be swapped out and replaced with no gunsmithing. Rear sight, unless you're a true purist, that won't matter. And if you are, believe it or not, KVAR actually has 500 meter rear sights. So that's an option if you need it. Now, another thing people were talking about was the ground down dust cover. That doesn't bug me, because that's kind of what you do. Now, if you're a big factory like Izhmash, Kalashnikov USA, you have a whole bucket, a whole box of parts. The AK has its famous loose tolerances, which means some parts are bigger, some parts are smaller, some parts are just right. It's a Russian version of Goldilocks. What a worker in a factory will do, they'll pull out some parts, and they usually, like for example on barrel, will gauge them 0, 1, 2, 3. They'll pull out dust covers. If one's too tight, they'll try a different one. Too loose, they'll try one. They'll kind of find one that fits, go on there, maybe do some minor fitting and go. A smaller company like KUSA, smaller compared to Kalashnikov concern, they don't necessarily have excess parts to deal with. And you run into this with a lot of AK builders like Legion USA too. You have the parts you have. You know, on those Legion guns I had built, they had serial matching top covers. If they were to put it on a US receiver and it didn't fit right, they're going to want to make that part fit. And ways you do that with an AK top cover, because it's made of stamped steel, you can, if it's too loose, kind of clamp it in the vise, clamp it and squeeze it in. Or if it's too tight, you could file the edges, either the front, where it goes into the trunnion there, or rear sight base, or if it's more in the back, you file it. That's what you do. And on the unit armorer level in the Russian military, or others, let's say, a mallet and several metal and, for that matter, wood files are part of the AK's armorer's toolbox, because that's how AKs work. They're meant to be hand fitted to kind of correspond with those famous loose tolerances. That's just part of it. So that doesn't bug me. There were reports of mag catch rivets walking out. That's bad. That needs to be fixed. Someone just forgot to crimp the rivet. But a few years ago, the exact same thing happened with Sentry in the Wasser 10. Someone forgot to properly flare the rivet, and so mag catches were walking out on a batch of Wassers. What's interesting is people who own KR103s and even KP104s that commented were generally happy with their guns, saving maybe some of them having the issues we're talking about or a less than ideal paint finish. But as far as reliability, people were generally quite positive who owned one. Not everyone. Some people had to send their guns back for being Jam-O-Matics. But more than a couple of people commented that they ultimately didn't send their gun back for warranty repair because it worked. At the end of the day, while it might have been cosmetically imperfect, mechanically it was running. And then on the other hand, a lot of people that were really dogging on KUSA didn't seem to own them. When they would talk about how bad the guns were, I would respond, oh, what gun do you own? How many rounds have you put through it? And what are your issues? And the majority would not reply. And a few also commented that they handled a KUSA gun in a gun shop and it felt chintzy. While I appreciate what something feels like, that's very surface level first impressions. And I don't know what they're comparing it to. Well, what chintzy is or isn't to them. I've heard people say that the Beretta ARX 100 feels chintzy and cheap. I think it feels great. I think it feels like a very well-made gun. That is very subjective. So I'm really interested to see how this review finishes out for the KP104. If it is reliable, like my KR103 and KR9 have been, it's definitely in the running to be a keeper. But we'll see. The cosmetic issues are annoying, but they're not deal breakers for me. They're things that need to be tightened up on. But to be fair, we're in 2022, and a lot of the workforce was laid off because of you know what. They're getting back to work with quite a few new hires that are frankly learning the ropes of how to build Kalashnikov type guns. And maybe even the old hires are a little rusty. On top of that, I think they're using some new subcontractors. The one reason I know that what they've said, and I have no reason to say they're lying, that they were using the KS-12 safeties. They ran out of standard safeties. And that's a logistics problem that lots of companies are facing as they get back to work now. A lot of the old subcontractors are just not available, or even if they are, they're not able to deliver in the same quantity. So I think we kind of have to allow for some getting back to work pains. I have a feeling that 2022 will be kind of a year full of Monday mornings, if that makes sense. And we've seen this before, referring back to the Wassers. Right after the 2008 election, running into early mid-2009, Century and Kuger put full steam ahead to make as many Wassers as possible because of worries about the political environment, and Wasser quality did take a nosedive. But most guns made then were still good. Most flaws were just cosmetic, but the rejection rate, the return rate, was higher in 2009 than before or since. And so I think looking back, while not all KUSA guns from 2022 are bad, I bet logistically the majority of lemons will probably be from this year for aforementioned reasons. We'll see. But since my experience with them has been positive with two guns I own, plus a KS-12 we did about a 300 round review on, it ran well too. I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because the KP104 maybe didn't have the best finish and they put the wrong safety and the wrong rear sight in. And again, even though they did that, they did a few things right. For example, the grip reinforcing plate, something that SGL 2194s and 3194s didn't have. The correct booster device, and now they are shipping with a correct AK-103 style polymer mag. So I'm still cautiously optimistic. Well, took a minute break there to see if the internet was working again. It is not, but it must have come back on for a minute because my Gmail inbox had popped up, and then when I went to refresh it, it was gone. So, back out here. Needed to grab a jacket anyway, because yes, it is cooling off. It's not like super cold, but yeah, needed a jacket, so I guess that's something, right? So, you're getting an extra long black box, which I suppose is fair, since I haven't really been doing too many lately. Oh, so what else is going on in the world, huh? Last week was surprisingly and thankfully pretty quiet. And this week, the gun market, selling market, has actually jumped up quite a bit. I've had a number of people trading guns in. And actually, one of my phone calls was a guy wanting to sell a couple of Lugers. So we'll see if that pans out. Had one guy trading in, selling an old Arsenal SA M7 Classic with the not wood but Bakelite furniture. Could be interesting. And a friend sent me an old Arsenal SA 93 that is in no way converted, so that could be a interesting video showing the conversion of those, because it's not a super well-known gun, but it is the very first Bulgarian AK to ever be imported. So he sent that. He also sent a Chinese NHM91 that did have the bipod, and he even had a Chinese clubfoot stock. So that might be a keeper to go alongside that Clayco I picked up earlier this year. I don't know, I'm kind of hot and cold on the Type 87 style, because it's not really military, but it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. Yeah, I've been around a minute when it comes to AKs. I never really intended it. It just kind of happened that way. Same with the Swiss SIGs. But to be fair, when something interests me, I really enjoy learning about it, researching it, and getting as much first-hand experience as I can. Oh well. Hopefully it doesn't rain tomorrow. That's the only thing. But it's really strange sitting out here in practically mid-November and hearing bugs, frogs. Typically they have either gone into hibernation or died 6 weeks before this, but it's been a weird season. How about where you live? How's the weather been? Let's see. What else is in the news? Nope, still don't really want to talk American politics, but I will mention briefly the Russian war in Ukraine. A lot of what's coming out now is from either third-party news sources or some stuff kind of leaking out of Russia and Ukraine. I've noticed the American news, and I use that in quotes, seems to have lost interest, that short-term attention span that it has. But things are bad in every which way. Sure, Ukrainian civilians are having their homes, their businesses, their livelihood, their lives destroyed. Say what you will about the Ukrainian government, NATO, those people did nothing. And quite frankly, I don't think the Ukrainian government did either. But either way, the civilians, the innocents, are always the one to suffer. Plus, all those homeless animals, it's heartbreaking. But even worse, the conditions within the Russian military are horrible as well. Those conscript camps they're setting up. There's going to be stories coming out of that for years and decades to come. But even now, there's people claiming that adequate food is not provided, adequate cold weather clothing is not available, adequate medical care, discipline, structure, hell, even adequate bullets. There was even an instance where Russia was actually sourcing weaponry from North Korea. rockets, missiles, bullets, whatever. I'm not sure how true that is. It's not a good look if it's any amount of truth. But that's what happens when a whole government is built on corruption, bribery. Basically, Putin was never playing 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional chess. No, he was just a mobster, a gangster. And after over 2 decades, he had all his cronies and sycophants, and everyone was stealing and not realizing that everyone else was stealing. So again, the people that suffer are the average soldier, the average citizen. A town I've actually spent a good bit of time in, maybe 2 weeks total, Voronezh in Russia. Unless it was fixed today, because I've been traveling. But for several days, even weeks, they had no clean water, and raw sewage was flowing in the streets because essentially municipal maintenance was breaking down, and that's happening more and more frequently. The powers that be in Russia are losing either the ability or the will to do their goddamn jobs. And at the same time, they're conscripting pretty much any male to go fight in a war that benefits no one. My wife said, and again, I don't know the validity of this, but it's an interesting anecdote, that out of 900 recruits sent in this one group, 600 of them were already missing in action, deserted, injured, or killed within just a few weeks. Again, probably exaggeration, but not a good look. What isn't an exaggeration is that America seems to be fast-tracking Russian green cards. My wife never signed up for American citizenship because you really can't do dual citizenship between Russia and America, not effectively. So she kept her Russian citizenship so she could easily go visit her parents. If she had claimed American citizenship, which she's been eligible for a very long time now, she would have to get a visa to go to Russia, something that was started in 2004. So she didn't. The problem, Russia has said, and when I say Russia, I mean the current government, any Russians living abroad or foreign sympathetics, they are agents of malcontent and essentially enemies of the state. And it's kind of inferred that if they were to fly back home, they would not have a good time of it. Something tells me that an able-bodied male would see himself immediately conscripted from the airport, and I don't even know what they'd do with a female, frankly. Not that, but I mean, they might put her to work in a factory, or either way, it wouldn't be good. Probably detained, and so I would imagine that's why America is fast-tracking Russian green cards, renewals, because what was supposed to take 90 to 120 days took about 2 weeks, which in American bureaucratic terms is lightning fast. And this is already after they gave her a 1-year temporary extension. And this kind of goes to show that no one's wanting to send any Russians back home because they would not have a good time of it. And that's something that even the Soviet Union didn't do. Russians did travel abroad, and Americans did travel to Russia during the Cold War. And as a general rule, they were not labeled enemies of the state, at least not without due cause. It's bad. It's bad in Ukraine. It's bad for the average Russian. Ironically, it's even bad for Putin. He went from being possibly the wealthiest man in the world with quite a bit of respect and fear from other foreign nations, and quite a legacy of lifting Russia up from what was admittedly a bad situation in 1998, 1999, economically speaking. he built himself, right or wrong, quite a good image and legacy. Yeah, what took him over 20 years to build has now come tumbling down in just over 6 months. In one of the dumbest decisions and biggest miscalculations in recent and possibly all of human history. It would be funny if it had not already cost the lives of well over 100,000 people. It really is fucking disgusting. Haven't really had a whole lot of really new exciting stuff. The model videos have been few and far between, although as I teased in the first kind of part in this loosely tied together series, I do have a couple of new ones, especially one I'm very excited about awaiting me when I get back. So looking forward to making part 3 about an aircraft. But not a whole lot new out. Some neat re-releases, but mostly just repaints, maybe new ordnance. But it really is cost. I am not arguing that expenses from manufacturing to transport to licensing all haven't gone up. They have. I just can't get in to more Hobby Masters or even Corgi when they're well north of $100. It is what it is, but that's just where I'm at. And a lot of the cheaper models either don't exist or they're just kind of re-releasing things that I already have too. I would love to see more ships. That Motor Cities Classics started doing ships in, was it 1/1200 or 1/1250 scale? I really like those for what they cost. But as far as I know, they've only released maybe half a dozen. But those aircraft carriers were super neat. And we did finally get the Queen Elizabeth and the Prince of Wales carriers from Corgi, and those were neat. I did a video on Prince of Wales. I did get Queen Elizabeth here about a month ago, so need to do that. I had them both on pre-order, and I didn't feel like canceling it. They are a little different, especially with what's on the deck, different planes and helicopters, but a little different structures of the ships as well. But that's it. And of course, Eagle Moss, by now we know they're officially gone. I'm sure in time someone will pick up the collection. I'm also sure it will take years. Funnily enough, this is mostly based on Amazon. Just popping up stuff. I'm not really tempted to buy them, but in 2022, the Playmates line of Star Trek figures is back. And I think they've only released 8 or 9 so far. Picard, Riker, Data. Then they have a couple from Discovery, Burnham, and Saru. Which, if I was tempted to get any, he'd probably be the one, just because I do like the character and actor. Don't hate me, I just do. And also kind of interesting from the movies, they have Admiral Kirk, Captain Spock, and of course Khan. They're not like the Star Wars. They're not 6-inch. I think they're nominally classed as 5-inch, which would make them slightly bigger than the original Playmates, which were more like 4.5-inch figures. But it's hard to say. One thing it is clear, whereas the Star Wars 6-inch seemed to go to reasonable pains to be within scale, you know, taller figures, a 1/10 of an inch taller, shorter figures like Leia, 1/10 inch shorter. The Star Wars, while there are Star Trek, differences in height to some extent, not really, not authentically. And whereas the Star Wars are mostly new bodies, at least in the beginning of the line, they do some reuse, like with Mandalorians when it's absolutely fine to do it, or Stormtroopers. But you know, when a new torso is needed, they will. It does seem like with the Star Trek line already within the first wave, they're using the same parts for, say, Picard, Riker, data, whatever, at least to some extent. And that doesn't do it. And they don't do photoreal, which is really funny that I seem to care about, even though I can't fucking see it. But I think what I do like about the whole photoreal thing, it shows that Hasbro is trying to kind of at least halfway appeal to more collector model enthusiasts, whereas the Playmates seem to be mostly focused on toys, and it shows in pricing too. The Black Series are between $20 and $25, and the Playmates are between $12 and $16. And they come with non-painted accessories, whereas the Black Series at least sometimes have painted accessories. At least the Black Series doesn't do their accessories in fucking purple, which even I can tell for some reason. It's a thing, but probably not my thing. But, good on them. They're priced right, and it's neat to see them back. And it'd be interesting to see if they continue Strange New Worlds or Disco or some of the newer shows. If they do ships, then I might. I think they have done the Enterprise D, but I've got a bajillion different models and toys of that. But if they did, say, some of the newer Romulan ships or Klingon ships, I don't know if I could say no to that. We'll see. Even during the original Playmates line, while I still bought the figures, in fact, being back home, visiting where I grew up, they're probably not too far away from me in an attic. I really like the ships more. I was over the moon when they did the Warbird and the Klingon attack cruiser, and actually followed the ship line a lot longer than I did the figure line. So there's that. But we'll see. Something new. Amazon popped it up, and then I Googled it on YouTube when I was bored a few days back. Why not? But it's something new, I guess, in the Star Trek series. At least it shows there's still interest. But I really want someone to pick up model quality diecast like Eagle Moss. It's just, Eagle Moss hit a perfect thing for me, because if they had flaws, they were usually in paint applications, not in structure, which has meant that the problems they had I couldn't see, and what I could feel, they felt solid. They were not really well known for like being uneven or like wiggly, poorly put together. They didn't have exposed screws. All stuff that tactile I could feel and appreciate. It was a good line for me, and they were good size. They weren't super expensive, palm sized, and they did a lot. It was well tailored to me, and they were pretty weighty for the most part. While some of them were more plastic than metal, just based on the design, a lot of them were very metal. Some of them basically all metal, except for maybe some clear engine parts or thin struts, that kind of thing. To be honest, I actually miss them. I know that's stupid. I know it's just a company with products made in China for mass market. But there was something delightfully exciting about getting the Eagle Moss box in the mail. That said, I will remember my last big box, and it came out of nowhere. I didn't know they'd even shipped it. It was the Voyager J. Was it the Nog? I don't know. One of those other Voyager 3rd series ships. And the last two Battlestar Galacticas, which was the Astro Queen and the Colonial Shuttle. I think, well, like the Star Trek, I kind of got in on it about halfway through, but the Battlestar Galactica, I was there from almost the very, very beginning. I think I got in on issue 2, maybe 3. Yeah, I guess it was 3. Because when they finally released the Galactica herself, that's what pushed me over the edge. I thought the Raider and the Viper were neato, but if they were only going to do, fighter ships, I wasn't sure. But when they started doing capital ships, I had to. And part of it was I just didn't know what the Battlestar looked like. And while some of the ships looked like kind of how I envisioned, a lot of them didn't, but in a good way. There were very few misses in that line. It had 25 regular issues with about 5 more special issues or alternative issues. So I was really happy with it. And it was priced fairly, especially if you bought them using a coupon or waited till post-holiday sale. So Even though it's a bit sappy and stupid, I do miss them. Oh well. At least we had them for 10 years nearly. And kind of the rising cost of Hobbymaster, Corgi, other models, the disappearance of Eagle Moss explains why recently I've focused more on Star Wars. I've had the Star Wars ships for a long time, kind of delving in and out of them. They're okay. There's some neat ones. They're not, well, I say they're not really models. I do have some. The old Diecast series, which ended with pretty much the prequels and maybe a little bit after. But for covering the first 6 films and a little bit of the Clone Wars series, they did a really good job. And they are actual models. They are metal with fine detailing. They come in a plexiglass display case with a backdrop and even a magazine. They're basically like the Star Trek, including size and quality. But I would say probably a little bit higher quality if I'm completely, a little finer detailing. They did really well with their capital ships. For example, their Mon Cal and their Star Destroyer. Those are great. Now the Titanium series, because they were kind of a spin-off and improvement of the old Micro Machines, they're good for what they are. For the $5 to $15 that they usually cost, they were majority metal. Sometimes they had moving parts. But they were kind of towing that line between toy and model. And they did have exposed screw holes, which normally would bug me and I don't like, but for the money. And they did a very expansive line, and they delved more into the Clone Wars and even some expanded universe. You know, recently I did that Bounty Hunters look, and those ships are really neat. The Mist Hunter is still probably my secret favorite from that series that I didn't know was cool until I got it. I originally actually got into the Titaniums because I like the capital ships, and I like the walkers and the ground ships. I really like the clone walkers. I still need to visit the separatist capital ships, the Invisible Hand and the Malevolence. I do have those. It's kind of funny too. Earlier this year, a lot of rare titaniums popped up on eBay for not crazy money. While at the same time, the previous little Hot Wheels ships, which have been coming out for about 10 years, and I guess 5 years now, they went up in price a lot because they haven't been building many of them. So there was kind of a really good opportunity to build up a titanium collection towards the beginning of 2022. But I did check in recently, and it seems like those have mostly been sold off, and now prices are on the rise all over the place. But it was a good opportunity. Even I took the opportunity to add some missing ships to the collection, or missing variants. For example, I got the Jedi Interceptor with the hyperdrive ring. I wanted one forever, and finally they dropped down to a price I could afford. Still wasn't cheap. It was like $35. Yeah, I'll do that since they haven't made them in 15 years. The only one I didn't add, because I just never found a good deal, was the Nebulon B frigate. I'm not paying $100. Sorry. But I do have that in the De Agostini line, so quality-wise, that's probably a better-looking model. Oh well. But, yeah, it was a neat little thing. But I guess maybe people turned loose of them after COVID, because I know collecting went up during those years. Or maybe a warehouse was uncovered with them. I know recently that several hundred still on the card Kenner figures were discovered in a closet or something. So once in a while, those little caches that people squirrel away do come up, hit the market, and it's great. It doesn't severely impact price, but it does give a limited number of people a shot at a reasonable price. And I think it's good vibes. So I mostly am into ships and walkers, be it Star Trek, Star Wars, or of course real world aircraft, planes, tanks, But then I kind of broke down and started doing the Star Wars Black series. What's funny, and here's exactly how it happened. I wanted to do kind of a thing, and I think you saw it in a video if you watched it, where I talk about the Separatist army, how they went from a Luckerho cruiser to a C-9979 dropship to an MTT, basically APC carrier, to how that would deploy B-1 battle droids. And I wanted to buy some B-1 battle droids to kind of show that. And I thought, okay, I'll grab the old Micro Machines pack of 8 or 9. Those things are really expensive, at least compared to, what you get. They're like 40, 50 bucks. I'm not doing that for 9 hunks of somewhat painted plastic. So I got to looking at the Black Series, 6 inches. They were like 15 to 20 bucks on sale, and they had a few different flavors of B1 droid. I thought, well, I'll buy that, and my excuse was, even though I wasn't really doing figures, well, he's more of a robot. And there were a few others in the line that I thought would be neat to grab. The probe droid was one of them. I actually found that one for a really good buy, I thought. It was one of the Prime Day sales some time ago, and it was like $23. I think regular was like $40. It's neat. I like that probe droid. The probot, as we used to call it in the 80s. So I kind of started there. And then I got tempted by the Stormtroopers and clones. Now, Stormtroopers, I remember what they looked like when I was a kid. But clones, I really didn't know. And that's why I did that video some time ago explaining, hey, this is what clones look like. That was cool. I kind of still justified it, even though they were people in suits. They're kind of nondescript army builders. You see where this is going. And then I would get pilots. Oh, pilots are neat. They're kind of army builders. And then I thought, I really like the bounty hunters. I really want Boba Fett. And then I was like, I really like Mandalorians, and I really want to see what some of the new figures from Mandalorian look like. And then from that point on, I was hopeless. I actually had a lot of fun finding good deals. Finding either Amazon deals or lot buys on eBay. And there are some rare figures, but with a few exceptions, the rarest ones are still under 40, 50 bucks. And sometimes the common ones are under 10 bucks delivered. Looking at you, Admiral Holdo. Unfortunately, also at you, Lando. I'm sorry, bud. And the thing is, Lando's cool. I got the Skiff Guard one early on cheap. And it's like, why is this not more? He's awesome. Yeah, I've had fun with it. It's definitely bringing me back to my childhood. And I feel like I picked a pretty good year to get into it because prices are down. The photo reel, which I can't see but still really appreciate, is up. Selection's really good. It seems like everything's in production. There's really nothing that I haven't been able to find for a good price. I'll take that back. There is the Anakin reissue or original. Not the Padawan, but the one from Revenge of the Sith. He's crazy expensive. I'm not going to do it, but I'm sure I'll bump into one cheap. That's what I did with Maul. I wanted the Revenge of the Sith, the Phantom Menace Maul, but I waited till I found one for like 30 bucks. But considering he comes with quite a few things and he had the photo reel, I was like, yeah, that works. I can do that. I may or may not have done toy lightsaber fights with friends in the lobby of the theater when Phantom Menace came out in 1999. I will not confirm or deny it. Also, once when I had my girlfriend over and we were doing our deed in the closet next to us was one of those lightsabers, and we bumped it, and it, during the middle of it, we heard absolutely 100% true story, and we both busted out laughing. So yeah, Star Wars has kind of brought back a lot of good feelings, both childhood and teenage and even young adult memories. For example, I really liked, and I said this before in videos, the Micro Machines Action Fleet. And I had a friend, and I had them kind of all just set up on their little pedestals. I was never an in-box collector. Gee, I wonder why. But I always tried to take care of my stuff. So I'd leave them all regimented up. TIE fighters here, Rebel ships there. I had a friend, though. He used to stay here a lot, and he would always grab one or two when he would go to poop. And I'd hear him in the bathroom going, shoo, doo, 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 doo. We weren't 6 or 10. We were more like 15, 16 years old. But that's how you know a real friend, when you're completely willing to drop all masculine pretenses and be a complete goofball. Plus, you're pooping. What else you gonna do? Those are cool for what they cost. I'm kind of happy to see that there's a kind of a collector market. There is that new, Micro Galaxy thing that came out this year too. I've looked at reviews online. It looks neat. I don't think it's for me. I like diecast ships. I can tolerate plastic figures, but unless you're talking about vehicles meant for them, like in video 1, the TIE Special Forces there, I want my ships to be metal. The new ones just seem a little, for one thing, they're smaller than the Action Fleet. For another, they just seem kind of not 100% toy-like. They're obviously meant more for adults. They're too small for most kids. But they're that modern plastic. And for another, I've still got my Action Fleet, again, in a box in the attic somewhere. It just seems like most people agree the majority of Action Fleet ships are superior to the Micro Galaxies. They're bigger, better painted, and the little figurines, whatever you call it, minifigs they come with, generally seem to have better paint and all that going on. So I will respectfully not do that. Now, the new Hot Wheels Select line, that, as I recently said, I've been super impressed with. That's a lot of good value for what you get. They're 4, 5, 6 inches. Some of them are almost entirely metal. Even the ones that have plastic are still majority metal. And they're priced between $8 and $20, maybe $25. But most of them can be found on Amazon for like $13.95 or $13.50 shipped, including the Millennium Falcon, the X-Wing. That's cool. I hope they do more of those. They still have exposed screw holes, which is annoying, but for that money, I'll let it slide. The Hot Wheels are fine. I think overall the titanium are better. But there have been some neat Hot Wheels, and once in a while the titanium won't do as well. For example, the Super Star Destroyer. If anyone knows what the titanium looks like, you'll know why exactly. But no, the Hot Wheels is a better ship. And both of them have screws, but the ones on the Hot Wheels are much more recessed, laid back. And it doesn't have that Star Destroyer gimmick. Cool gimmick idea. Crummy execution on the titanium. So it does happen occasionally. I'm trying to think of what else might fall into that category. Yeah. Titanium really is a good line. Oh, the U-Wing. I would actually say the new U-Wing, well, new being like 6 years old now. Trust me, when you get to be in your 40s, 6 years seems recent. But the Hot Wheels U-Wing seems nicer than the new Titanium U-Wing, which, to be fair, the Titanium series was folded into the Black series. It's no longer the old Titanium. They call it the Titanium Black series. Still not bad, though. And I do like them. I noticed the boxes that the Hot Wheels Select are coming in are more reminiscent of Black Series boxes too. You know, not a card, but an actual box with a window and kind of a fold-out thing. Yeah, I encourage you to check it out if you're into it. Like I said, I even have bought a couple for friends as little ornaments. You just like thinking of you type gifts. Nothing special, but you know, hey, why not? Oh, I did do videos years ago on the Hot Wheels Elite series, which is actually even a larger scale than the Select. And I bought them for, usually around 30 bucks, 35, maybe 40 for some of the bigger ones. They didn't do a ton of them. They did a Rebel X-Wing, couple of variants, a Resistance X-Wing, couple of variants, Standard TIE Fighter, and First Order TIE Fighter, and they did a Millennium Falcon. That Millennium Falcon, I think I paid maybe 40 bucks for. It was the biggest because it has little tiny Chewbacca's in there and, you know, moving parts, and it's all metal. It's kind of nice. It's 6-7 inches. I looked on Amazon a while back just to see what they were going for. $300 fucking dollars. Yeah. If I had one new in box, I'd probably be tempted to sell it for that. As cool as it is, it's not that cool. It's a ship inspired by a hamburger and an olive. Take it for what you will. Is relatively reasonable as prices were at the beginning of 22. I've noticed here at the end they are bumping up quite a bit on everything. Guns, toys, models, cars, gasoline. Inflation sucks. Well, thanks to non-functional internet, you're getting a really long black box. Hey, I want to do something. It's my birthday, but I like giving back to you guys. And these are cathartic for me. I actually meant to do one of these last time I was down, but just wasn't in the mood, and I don't try to do videos unless I am in the mood. But back to the Black Series figures. There's been a lot of neat ones come out. Again, I feel like I kind of got into it at a good time for me. I did kind of complete the Mandalorian lineup. There were a few new Mando types like X-Woves. I did get him in a couple weeks ago, but I hadn't had a chance to do a video yet. He's actually the newest figure I've got. I really want the Grand Inquisitor, but might have to wait. He's not popping up yet. I did get that Purge Trooper, which I'm really thrilled with. Bought him actually when J-Ro and I were down here last time. I was waiting for him to get out of bed and found a store that actually had him in stock for a hot minute and ordered it, and it came within like 2 days. There are quite a few of the newer ones I do want. The robot-legged Darth Maul, kind of with Clone Wars Darth Maul. Hey, I've been talking for a long time. Looking forward to him. I'm not really big on the Jedi. I've bought a couple. Maybe it's because I'm feeling them, not looking at them. The only ones I really like, I was pretty underwhelmed by Padawan Anakin. Although, I'll just bury him in sand and it'll all be good. I do like the Mace Windu because it's still Samuel fucking L. motherfucking Jackson. He's pretty cool. I got his clone armor variant. And actually, Joe and I were talking about kind of making him a mascot for the channel, just for funsies. I do like the, Wandering Jedi Obi-Wan with the robe. He comes with a lot of neat stuff too, and for 22 bucks, I think that's what I paid for him on Amazon. So there are some I like, but there's a few that I just, I'm fine with. If I find a good price, pick them up. If not, no harm, no foul. Trying to think what else is out. There's not any new Stormtroopers or Clone Troopers. So yeah, I guess mostly the Grand Inquisitor and Maul at this point in time I'm into. I was happy they re-released Leia in the Bouche, because I was just going to put it in with the Bounty Hunters. But nice that was in the archive, because that was one that was getting pretty spendy. cropping up on $100, and then the archive comes out with a better paint and better proportions, and it cost me $21 delivered. Sometimes it pays to be patient. Oh, one neat thing, and it's really my first experience with really pre-ordering. They had a 3-pack with an updated Mando with the Beskar spear, the later older Ahsoka, which I didn't have any Ahsokas at all, with the cloak, and a Grogu who was pooping. I didn't have a pooping Grogu. And I pre-ordered the pack because drinking may or may not have been involved that night. It had a scheduled date of December, and I got it mid-October. So that was neato. I think it is a little expensive. It'll probably go on sale, but I was having a little fun. Why not? And it's $66 delivered, considering it is a large package. So it probably cost them $10 to deliver. You know, realistically, it's about $50, so call it $25 per figure. And the Ahsoka I really do like. It's the first time I've ever had one of her. And Mandos are always fun. He came with his pistol, rifle, spear, cape. No jetpack this time, but he did have the Beskar armor, the shiny armor. Spear is neat, though. Now, if we can only melt it down and make a little tiny armor set for the pooping Grogu, what do you think? Ahsoka's funny. That character was so annoying when Clone Wars came out. I'll be honest, Clone Wars was annoying. But it also shows you, if you stick with a show, if you give a show a chance and at the same time the writers listen to you, if both parties try, you can get something really good. And in a lot of ways, the Clone Wars show redeemed the prequels. I think it really showed the expanded universe the prequels were set in and just made it more meaningful. It made characters like Jar Jar tolerable and other characters like Anakin actually sympathetic. Yeah. I still think the Anakin Padme thing, the romance, was the definition of forced and really cringy. 5-year age difference doesn't really matter when you get middle-aged. But, yeah, when one's 19 and one's 24, that's barely legal. And when you realize they met when one was like 9 and one was 14... Yeah, no. I still don't understand the logistics of how she was a queen, but elected at 14? Have you ever met a 14-year-old girl? I admit it would be hilarious to give them control of a whole planet. Just not any fucking planet I'd be living on. And then you get Sandboy, who, makes the guy who played John Connor as a young kid look like, Humphrey Bogart. Actually, he did pretty well in Terminator 2 for a young kid. But, yeah, anyway, enough said. That horse has been beat to death. But what was neat about the prequels, at least Lucas had a story to tell. And if he didn't tell it the best, and he had a very good setting, there was something there. It just needed different interpretation, and the Clone Wars did that. So I'm kind of happy to get figures, and I do love all the clones. If a new clone comes out, I do definitely pick it up. It's neat. I even like the Battlefront versions, like the Jet Troopers and Jump Troopers. Oh, one I did pick up. I don't know why. Kind of felt like it was the Guard 4-pack. I really like that Senate Guard with the rifle. And kind of this is what I was getting at. You can tell I'm tired, but no internet. I need to do a few things before I go to bed. The sequels. I don't care for them. Yeah, I know, news at 10, right? But not because the actors are bad. Much to the contrary. The actors salvage those as much as they could. And God, it's weird, but J.R. agrees with me. We actually had a conversation for about 2 hours when we were down last. In hindsight, in retrospect, taken individually, Last Jedi is the best one, because at least it had a story to tell. I may not have liked the story or the direction, but it had a story. Force Awakens, it didn't have any original story. And Rise of Skywalker, you'd be better off playing a video game. Not even a good one at that. Kind of a mediocre one. Honest to God, tell me the truth. Which has a better plot and pacing? Rise of Skywalker or Jedi Fallen Order? Yeah, exactly. But my point, that's why I held off getting any First Order troopers in the Black Series. But then I got bored, and they were so cheap, I had to buy some. And even though I don't really like the movie, I was pretty successful in divorcing myself from that to just the design. And I really do like some of the new ones, like the Mountain Trooper. Their version of a Flame Trooper is pretty neat. I really like their Walker driver. Yeah, I do. And who couldn't like the Ginger General Cux? Yeah. So I don't know. Again, cheap. I wouldn't pay full price, but for fun and to kind of complete the set from clones through stormtroopers to First Order troopers. Yeah, why not? So I've had some fun with that. But I'm not really, as weird as it is, I'm not really into the hero characters. I don't have any Poes, Finns, don't really have any interest in that. Nothing against the actors. In fact, the actors did an amazing job with what they were given. Kind of if you think about it in a lot of ways, the sequels and the prequels are opposites of each other. Where one shines, the other one fails, and vice versa. Including with their writers and directors. I honestly think if you had George Lucas write the script and it was adhered to, and he was on set as an advisor, and you had someone like J.J. or even Rian Johnson as the director, I think you'd have something good. If you had George Lucas's imagination and world building combined with not him doing dialogue and like day-to-day directing, and that's kind of what we got with Empire Strikes Back and why it is what it is. He was much more hands-off there as a director than any of the other films. Oh well, nothing's perfect. How it goes. I'm not emotionally tied up. Stuff I like, I enjoy. Stuff that disappoints me like that, I get over it and move on, and that's what I've done. And it's hard to stay mad when you do get good films like Rogue One, good series like The Mandalorian, decent series, or at least acceptable series like Obi-Wan. Yeah, I liked Obi-Wan okay. Yes, I know it had issues. It still had the guy from Train Spotting back. I'll take it. And I didn't hate Solo. I thought it was a story that didn't need telling. It was unnecessary. But with that out of the way, it could have been worse. The whole Lando L-37 thing was weird, but oh well. Yeah. Doopy. Still weird hearing bugs out here this late. Wonder if the internet's working yet. We'll say this, the new GoPro battery is working out well. And Fox and I both bought GoPro 11s. We debated between that and the 10 for a while. I'm glad I got the 11. I'm liking it. It's fixed a few things for me personally that the 8 had. Not that I hated the 8. It actually worked well for me. But yeah, this is doing pretty great. And looking forward to continuing to use it to do range sessions. I know J-Ro because he's actually a video professional, and I mean that sincerely. He's been a paid video editor and film or a recorder for 20 years. He doesn't like GoPros. The way the fisheye lens works and all that kind of insults his creative sensibilities, and I get that. It's like me with guns. But I tried to use that analogy with him. Let's go back to like the SIGs. I like the SIG 551, the imports, or that I should say this SG 551. But if I'm being completely honest, the American-made SIG 556 or 551A1 may very well be fine for some people, a lot of people. It is reliable enough, it's accurate enough, and as a range shooter, a fun gun, maybe the import isn't worth it. And to be fair, imports are just kind of neat for what they are in and of themselves. So, J-Ro's camera and abilities is the true import, and for me, the GoPro 11 is what I can appreciate and do is the 551A1. Ironically, just this week, actually right before leaving town, I had a guy contact me. He was wanting a 553 short barrel, which is with the threaded barrel. As far as I know, all 553 short barrels have threaded barrel. And he wanted it with pick rail, not diopters. Unfortunately, 553 SBs have been in huge demand this year, and none really have been imported. You can't get them, and I told him that. You kind of missed the boat on the new market. Then he asked me for a 551 with a pick rail and a threaded barrel. While there are a few 551s that came in with pick rails, the vast majority, especially the recent ones, are all diopters. And I only know of like 2 551s, kind of almost like a one-off, that came in with a threaded barrel. Be they the LB or the SB or the Sporter 16-inch in between variant, they all have the integrated flash rider. And I jokingly said, sounds like what you want's a SIG 551A1. And he actually got interested. And he's like, what do you want for it? And I didn't know. I kind of went off what happened. But like I said, I just took 2 in on trade from a person. So I had them. It's like, well, if you're serious, I don't know, 2,000? Because, right now that would be with, of course, a carbine stock. Right now, a import with the stock is probably $4,500, $5,000. So, half price. Of course, it is the U.S. made one. And he thought, oh, that's a great deal. Well, it's like, but you understand what these are, right? They're U.S. made. But I was like, look, call me. Because I don't want to sell someone a false bill. Be deceptive. So I explained what they are. But I said, at the end of the day, they do run. I've had very good luck with them in the reliability department. I've sold a lot. People are generally happy. While they're not tack drivers, they're fine. While the iron sights suck on the U.S. ones, the diopters, the previous owner actually upgraded the sights on both. I forget what they were. They weren't Swiss, but they were something better than what was there. Otherwise, they were stock guns with Swiss buttstocks. Hey, the battery finally died. I actually just picked up a couple of new batteries. I want to make sure they work for tomorrow anyway. And it's still going because the internet inside is still not working. Fun. I needed to do a few things before I went to bed. Hey, vey. So, I guess it means more Blackbox. Why not? I had to put like chapters in this. As I was telling the tale of a tale, I was talking with the guy about the SIG 551A1, and it actually seemed like it might be what he wanted, needed, whatever. He had bought a couple of 553s off me already, but he was is a dealer, a manufacturer, and he had already made them into post-dealer samples, and they were going to new homes for various reasons, so he needed another one. But if he wanted a pick rail, especially one with a threaded barrel options, and then when they take Swiss mics, options aren't exactly great. I mean, I guess you could buy a 553 and chop the barrel and thread it, but that's a lot. And I asked him, well, what do you want it for? Well, he wants to make it into another machine gun. Again, legally, because he has the SOT and all that, so no worries there. It's like, well, heck, in that instance, oh, and he wanted to shoot it suppressed. So the 551A1, it will be reliable, and they seemingly are well made. These are earlier ones, so they had the Swiss stock, not the later ones without. So they probably still have the cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel. Maybe that's really decent. And he was super impressed with the price of. I just kind of pulled out of nowhere. Hadn't actually logged him in yet from the other person. 2,000. I said, no, you understand this isn't an import. This is U.S. made gun. Sure. Okay, well, he said, what do you do? He said, you want to call tomorrow? I was like, well, I'm going to be traveling, so if you want to do it now, we can do it now, or we can do it in a few days. So he did that, and then I said, I've got some extra mags, and since he's buying the gun, I said, $50 for used ones in good working order, or $65 for doing the box ones. And he kept saying, no, I want the Swiss mags. Yeah, I know, these are Swiss. And he kept saying, well, no, basically the price is throwing him off. He kept saying, that seems awfully cheap. It's like, well, you could buy the gun at my asking price. I'm trying to help you out and sell them to you at cost. I said, now, I'm not asking you to clean me out, but if you want a couple extra mags, I'll sell them to you at cost. You made a quick and easy sell. And then I jokingly said, well, if you insist on paying more, you're welcome to pay. But so yeah, he ended up taking the 551A1 and a total of 4 mags. And I was actually able to get it out before the Veterans Day holiday weekend. So it'll be made into a machine gun. And hope he's happy with it. I mean, for his purposes of just kind of a bullet hose, it should do fine. And it's better than him buying a Swiss import, say a 553 LB, and cutting the barrel and doing all that. I mean, someone's gun, they buy it, they can do whatever they want with it, but I prefer not. My point was, to me, a 551 import is the way I want to go. To him, and many others for different reasons, a 551A1 or a 556, perfectly fine. And the same thing goes for cameras versus me and J-Ro. For his professional level, a GoPro is the 551A1, but it works for us. Plus, I'm blind, so, well, I fucking care. But, yeah. The one thing I will say about J-Ro, he is still a professional, even though we go back way far. If I say we're doing it this way, it's my, he goes, all right, that's what we're doing. Because he understands that at the end of the day that, the client hires him, and that's what we do, and he's always been a perfectionist, even when we were in university. And I've tried to kind of teach him the mentality of good enough. Now, the thing is, I'm not a sloppy person. I like doing the best possible job. But it's better to hand in a paper that you'll get an 85 on the due date when it's good enough versus a paper you might get 98% on a week later, a week past the due date. Sometimes you just have to have a cutoff, and that's the best you can do. And videos are that too. If with infinite time, lots of stuff can be highly polished and effective, but we have deadlines in this world. And I think to some extent that goes all the way back to 3 days ago when you started watching this video, or rather listening, about like KUSA. I think, and this is just speculation, but hey, it's late, we got nothing else better to do, right? I think doing things like putting the KS12 safety, or maybe a little less than amazing finish, grinding dust covers, I think that's them trying to say good enough. Because the alternative, would have been not to ship the guns at all. I know it sounds good to say we're going to put the right safety in, but what if that delayed shipping out 1,000 guns weeks, months even? To a certain mindset, it's better to have good enough. People have reported that when they've contacted KUSA about this, they do get sent the correct safety, something I do need to do, because for now I just put in a WBP safety. It's fine, but I wouldn't mind getting the right one from KUSA. Sometimes it is better to ship something than nothing at all. HMG. Deep cut now. But sometimes it's not. And it's difficult to know when it is and when it is not acceptable. And I don't pretend to know myself. I would say for something like a Swiss SIG, you probably want to ship it perfect because of what they cost and their reputation. But Sig Sauer USA, with their various SIG 556, 551A1 guns, was notorious for shipping different parts. They'd change up buttstocks, flash hiders, sights, whatever, on a whim, probably based on whatever parts were available. And Colt was that way with the SP1. If the internet were around in 1964 when that came out and followed the SP1 through 1982/85 when it was done, it could have had a field day with Colt. That gun was far from consistent. Now to us collectors today, that's what makes it charming. But you know, the early ones had chrome bolt heads. They had three-prong flash hiders. They have the plus marking on the lower. You know, it's a whole litany. You move into the late 60s and 70s, that all changes. Birdcage flash hiders, different marked lowers, cutaway bolt carriers, Parkerized phosphated bolt heads. Yes, I know it's not bolt head, it's just bolt, but I'm trying to be specific. Different cotter pins, different types of furniture even, different materials. They changed it all the time because they used whatever parts they had. And manufacturers do that a lot, especially ones that are more of a military versus a commercial standard. But, yeah. Who knows? I think a lot of guns, if the internet had been around when they were out, would suffer a much different fate than they did. Chinese AKs probably being a prime example. You know how I feel about them. They're not bad. Really not. I've also seen lemons, and I've also seen excellent guns. The problem is today, of course, you have survivor bias. Any SP1, or most of them were excellent, to be fair, as far as reliability. But either way, any Chinese guns or whatever that survive today, they're fine. Because the bad ones were either fixed, or they were sent back to the factory and replaced and probably cut apart for scrap or used as a source of spare parts. We only see the ones that made it through the squeeze. And I'm hoping in 5-10 years, KUSA, maybe even, PSA, Palmetto State Guns, same thing, same way. Because why would anyone keep around a defective, broken gun? They either fix it or send it back, most of the time. So, I think that's why guns from the past often seem like they never had a miss, like they were all perfect. I even remember that some of the early Steyr AUGs had broken firing pin issues. That's why they changed the firing pin design a few times. Not a major issue, but it existed. I was talking with Fox last week about imports, and I mentioned that I've seen Segas with sloppy finish, hand-stamped markings, even some that weren't reliable for various feeding issues. One gun series I have a hard time really thinking that had issues. Molats, Vepers. Certainly with their rifles, certainly with the FM series, they were really top-notch. Their QC was just great. Sometimes with the Vepr 12s, you did run into some QC issues. Not so much the early ones back when they were $1,200, $1,300, but at their lowest point when they were as cheap as 800 bones, you could tell that one of the things that the importer had Molot do to meet a price point was maybe skip a QC check here and there. They were mostly still excellent, but sometimes the fit, the finish wouldn't be so great. Like the paint was a little sloppy on some. The dust covers fit a little loose or maybe a little bit crooked. Things like that. There were a few instances of jam guns, but those are few and far between, and I still often suspect ammo and mags, especially in a 12 gauge shotgun. But yeah, the Molots were one of the few that just worked and kept on working. That said, that's an aberration. That's the exception, not the rule. Ah, well, I'm not trying to make excuses for them. I'm just trying to be objective and real. And I've seen so many AK lines come and go. And I, aside from the Molots, can't really think of any that didn't have their fair share of QC issues sooner or later, including Arsenal. A lot of Arsenals are amazing. Some, yeah, they were known for canted sights, crappy paint finish. Told you about that one SAS M7 Classic I had. Came to me, had a removable muzzle nut. In fact, it was a little too removable. At Arsenal's custom shop, no less, they forgot to install the front detent and spring. Yeah, the hole was there in the front sight base, so it was easy to install. They just skipped a step. It happens. We're all human. Well, some of us. Some of us are aliens or Time Lords or what have you, but that's neither here nor there. Others are cats, which, as we know, are superior to humans. I don't know. I am willing to give them a chance. But, you know, you get a couple. If they keep doing this crap, they can go the other direction. I've seen plenty of manufacturers start off really strong and take a nosedive. A great example, Waffen Works. Look them up. They started off really at the top of AK-74 kit building game, and then they went and it happens too. So which trajectory will KUSA take? Oh. And kind of tying it all to the other part of this video about the Black Series and Hobby Master and all that. If you go into those forums, those videos, those communities, they complain about their stuff every bit as much as gun people complain about theirs. Every community, every group has right complaints, you know, justifiable complaints and justifiable standards. But then there are always that small but vocal minority that just has unrealistic expectations, and no matter what you give them, they'll still find something to complain about. The problem is when you read complaints about guns, toys, models, separating the two types of people. Is this person complaining legitimate? Are the complaints legit? Or is it just someone who likes to complain for the sake of complaining? And when you're looking to buy, that's difficult to parse out. Sometimes if you read the Amazon 1-star reviews, you'll see that some reviews are totally deserving of 1 star. Others are just absurd. I don't know. Speaking of unrealistic expectations, I'm really hoping the internet comes on soon, because I'd like to eat a bite and go to bed, because I want to shoot tomorrow. But don't let it be said that I didn't do a long Black Series, Blackbox KUSA video. By the way, some people do criticize KUSA for using the Kalashnikov name as if they're trying to pull something. Oh, they're not really Kalashnikov concerned. They overtly state they're not. Whatever. I don't care. It's kind of like with the porn star marketing. It's a name. It's kind of a little gimmicky. Kalashnikov is just a surname in Russia. And it's an operating system. You know, the Kalashnikov operating system. From that perspective, they are producing Kalashnikov operating system guns. And more than pretty much any other U.S. manufacturer outside of maybe like Arsenal in Las Vegas. They have the most drawings, specs, TDP of anyone. They may not be always able to follow them because they can't get the parts, but at least they know. Whereas a lot of manufacturers don't know, don't have access to that data. And some, even if they did, Century, they just wouldn't care because it's all about the buck. And I really hope KUSA doesn't go down that route. I really want them. They still have a chance. They have access to something that very few other American companies do, and I want them to take full advantage of it. I don't know. We will see. We will see. We have seen success with that in WBP. A lot of people were very skeptical of WBP in Poland when they came out, saying that they weren't FB Radom, they weren't an original contractor. And to be fair, they had an uphill battle to fight, but they did it successfully. While I have seen a handful of defective guns out of WBP, they're quite few and far between. And as I've said many times, they're among absolute favorites. And they're a classic AKM, which is just great. And a Polish one to boot. So yeah, those are the guns we're taking out to shoot today. And hopefully all goes well, guys. By the time you listen to this video, the weekend will be over. But for me, it's just beginning, and it started off quite nicely, and happy to have a federal 3-day weekend because of Veterans Day. So, with that, I'm going to call it a night, and hopefully internet's working, as I mentioned maybe once. It isn't. It also has kind of quit cooling off out here. Kind of got to a point and stopped. But yeah, stay tuned for part 3, looking at an airplane model or two. And check out the main Mishaco channel for full reviews on those various guns I rambled on about for a while tonight. And if you'd like to help support us, because it's kind of the economy that it is now, check out the link to the Patreon page. You know the deal. But appreciate you hanging out. And yeah, hope everyone, as we move close into Thanksgiving and Christmas, is having a good holiday. I guess it's really the first one in a couple of years we've had without major fear of COVID. I know it hasn't disappeared. I know it's still a thing, but you know what I mean. And I do hope people keep their thoughts and prayers in mind for the folks in Ukraine, and even the folks on the ground in Russia that are suffering through no fault of their own, just the average citizens, because it's bad. And yeah, I guess that is good enough, folks. This is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.